them, Jonathan, many of them don't think about the average citizen. They just do what they want.
All right, here we go.
Yay.
Testing. 1, 2, 3. All right, got another show. Whoa. Hey, how's everybody doing out there tonight? Brian, you're there in living color again with the
everyone.
shades. Good to see. Good to see.
Jonathan,
Jonathan,
dream.
what's
Everybody.
happening? Hey, you got a new
Living the
coffee
dream.
mug. Let's see what it looks like. You got a new coffee
Oh,
mug.
yeah.
I saw you
Check
just
this
showing
out.
it off. Just you
Yep,
know.
showing this off. Show off my coffee mug here.
There you
This
go.
is, I normally have my Ohio political news mug, but this is a one that I'm showing off tonight. It's a little different. Change of pace.
Gotcha. Well, I got my mug here. I never leave home without it. I love it so much I sleep with it every night, okay? I can't get enough of my mug. I love it.
It makes everything taste better. Joe,
It
where's your
does.
background?
I ditched the background. I'm going for a new look here. It's called the No Look, New Look. All right? So we'll see if it pans out or not. I kind of like it in here. I turn on all the lights, except for this light above me, and it's I like it. I like it a lot. All right. We got a lot to talk about. We got Jay Edwards joining us here in just a few minutes. He is coming to us live from southeastern Ohio. So that's where he's at, southeastern Ohio. But he's running for treasurer. So that's Jay Edwards. He's going to be joining us. And Victor Zancudo is joining us also later on at 8 o'clock. Victor is from Venezuela. And we're going to be talking about the Maduro regime, just how horrible that regime was. And if you recall, he was just kidnapped by Trump a few weeks ago. But you got to hear some of the horror stories. We're going to hear what it's like to live in Venezuela under dictatorship and communism and stuff like that. You listen to this here a second. Did you guys see this? Bigfoot. He is like everywhere. This is Portage. No, don't laugh, man. This is Portage County Bigfoot sightings over a 96-hour duration. Look at all of them. 2 sightings in Mantua, 2 sightings in Garrisville,
Mantua.
and Manawa.
Wait.
And that's all near Ravenna. I see Ravenna written over here, so it's got to be close to Ravenna. He's running
I
around
wish
in
Commissioner-
Ravenna.
I wish Commissioner Plechik was here tonight. He'd show you the picture he sent to me. He took a picture with Bigfoot. It was real live Bigfoot, not just a poster or something like that.
Oh, really?
So he's got connections with Bigfoot, I understand.
Oh,
Well, I
didn't know we
got
could get
I
photos
got to
with
crack
photo
on it
op.
because Pleshnik sent me something also with Bigfoot, and it's got a picture of him. This is AI generated though. He's next to Bigfoot, and Bigfoot's got this big X through no property taxes. And then if you read the caption and stuff like that, it says that Bigfoot was evicted. That's why he's running around all over the place. He couldn't afford his property taxes anymore. He got booted out.
Bigfoot was complaining that because of Jerry Serino and a few others, there's too many people invading Bigfoot's neighborhood because they can't afford their taxes, and they have to go into camping, and that's disturbing Bigfoot.
I don't know. There's got to be something to it, though. Have you guys now? This is a very serious question. Have you ever seen Bigfoot? Have you ever run into him? I mean, physically run into him and said, excuse me.
I'm going to have to plead not guilty. I have not seen Bigfoot. Really, not. There's some strange sightings in Lake County, but Bigfoot, no.
There's a lot of strange people running around too, but
Yes.
I guess I've never seen Bigfoot. I've seen, but the thing is, he's got. I've always made a joke of that, saying he's got 2 feet, so it's got to be big feet, not Bigfoot, unless he's hopping around or something. But then there's got to be more than one, right? Because if he's the only one, he's going to die. The species is just going to disappear after him.
They never die. They never die. Bigfoot just keeps on going, Joe.
He just keeps going and going.
That's the
and
mystery.
going.
That is the mystery.
Yeah, Jonathan, you ever seen Bigfoot in your neck of the woods? You're out there
really,
in.
is this We're a news show. Is
Geauga
this how we're
County.
starting the news with talk of
Yeah,
Bigfoot?
it's just big stuff, Bigfoot. Yeah. You don't believe in it. I can tell. I can tell by the way you were sighing and saying this is dumb and stupid. You don't believe in Bigfoot, do you?
No, but I'll tell you, here's as close as I'm going to get to the story. There's a great story from a lake, I don't know, in Wisconsin or something, where that for years had these stories of these sightings on the edge of the lake or whatever. And they found these huge, deep embedded footprints from some really super heavy beast. And it turns out years later, it was finally revealed that some guy had made these metal castings and you could strap them onto your feet and they were like lead. And they would go by boat and go up to the shore and then walk to make these impressions and loop around and then come back out and get in the boat. And people freaked out about it for years. It turned into this big lore, and people would go and camp there and tell horror stories to their kids and everything. But it was two guys pulling a prank in like the 1950s with these big lead things that they would put on their feet. So I think ultimately, in my book, that's what it all boils down to. It's a whole bunch of people that put on suits and everything. They like, they put on costumes. They go out there and try and gin up some lore so that the local bed and
So
breakfast
you're totally
gets more
against
business.
it. Yeah, I hear you. You're saying
No,
that.
no, Jonathan, it
Totally
could be
fake, you're
illegals,
saying.
though. You know that. They're letting anybody across the border, so he could have come across.
During
Yeah,
the
maybe that's what it is.
Biden regime, he could have
Could have
easily snuck
That is
past. And the
absolutely
cartels
right.
aren't going to bother him either.
It's El Chupacabra. El Chupacabra. What? I don't speak Spanish. I don't know what the word is. El
We got-
Chupacabra.
We got some neat news here coming up. We're going to be talking about Venezuela, but I wanted to bring this up here. This is some breaking news, and I'm thinking it is legit. Now, it's saying former President Nicolas Maduro set to testify against dozens of Democrat and Rhino governors and secretaries of state, as well as election officials that have taken millions of dollars in bribes from his regime. From his
Ooh,
regime.
that'd be spectacular. I love it.
And they got a
Hey, I'll
picture
make
of
an
a
offer.
couple of them right there.
I'll make an offer. Well, I think those two are obvious. I think if our governor gets caught up in this, I will point a camera at myself and I'll capture a video of me doing a little jig. I will broadcast that. I don't know how to dance, but I will, for the sake of this show and my excitement over the prospect of maybe replacing Governor DeWine early, I would get out and do a little jig to get rid of that. Rhino's too nice a word for him. So,
But
I'm
what do
one
you
that's
guys?
really
What do you
looking
think
forward to
about
I
that,
think
though?
There's something to it.
Yeah, what do you think about that whole? I think it's legit. Hearing enough about it, so.
It's
and that
it's
was
right-
one of the
it's right up
reasons I
there
was
with,
told that he went out and captured Maduro. That was
Yeah.
one of the reasons, because he could get inside.
I've
That's
heard the
right
same
up with
thing
all
from
at
him about
the
this whole
federal
election
level,
process.
Joe. At the federal level, they've been talking about locking up Hillary Clinton and everybody else at the in the federal government, and we'll be 6 feet under before they even have to get the first person arrested. This is seems to be all hype. Nothing ever happens. Nobody ever gets. They all get
Nobody gets
investigated.
arrested. Yeah.
Nobody gets indicted and tried, and so I hope so, but I'm not that optimistic.
All right. Well, wait a minute. Let me piggyback on that. This is I know I get to sound like a broken record here, but I'm going to say the same thing that I always say. If we expect accountability out of the Republican Party, first we need to fill the Republican Party with actual Republicans. That means precinct strategy. You can find out more at ohioprecinctstrategy.org or the nationalprecinctstrategy.com. Dan Schultz and I have been coaching the nation on it for over 3 years. Dan Schultz has been doing it for about 16 years. All it is, ladies and gentlemen, is just basic civics. It teaches people to get involved at the local level in the Republican Party, and trust me, that feeds up into the whole system and recreates, it brings back accountability in the Republican Party. Right now, we have a weak, tepid, rhino-infested Republican Party with a whole bunch of weak spine, feckless, and half of it's empty. Half of the Republican Party right now, ladies and gentlemen, is empty. Nobody bothered to run. That weakness leads to these people in office for decades soaking up money, soaking the tax-paying citizens with no accountability. So don't rely on Trump or the Department of Justice alone. They need help and support, and that comes in the form of we the people getting active in local politics.
Yeah, we got to.
It also,
Gotta
Jonathan,
go
I would
gotta get-
piggyback onto that. So say it also means that we should be electing candidates such as Marcel Stribich and our guest tonight, Jay Edwards, because we need some new blood in the State House. There's just no question about it until we get some new leadership. And that means, I don't know how we can oust Matt Huffman or Rob McCauley. Rob McCauley's going to be he's a lieutenant governor candidate, with, he's forgot his name.
Vivek Ramaswamy.
Yeah,
Oh,
Vivek.
Ramaswamy,
Thank
yeah.
you, Vivek Ramaswamy. And you're just going to get more of the same if you keep electing these same people. So
Yeah, I mean, that
I-
is the definition of insanity, doing the same things and expecting different results.
I
We've been
can
doing the
remember
same
speaking. Yeah, I remember speaking to Robert Sprague a couple of years ago up here in Lake County, and I talked to him about property taxes. He didn't even know about the 20 mil floor. So I was surprised that somebody in his position wouldn't know the ins and outs of property taxes.
We're going to bring on our guest here because he is here right on time. Jay Edwards. Hey, Jay, can you hear me? And make sure you.
I can hear you. I can hear you. I was really getting into some of the things you guys were talking about there. I agree with you. We have, feckless leaders leading us in Columbus. And the example I get all the time that I bring up on the campaign trail is, they pretend to be MAGA publicly. They pretend to be, supportive of Donald Trump. We just saw the speaker a couple weeks ago say, no way, Trump needs to get away from the SAVE Act. No way we can do that. That's a states' rights issue. So that's where he's at. But, 6 years post-COVID, we still don't have medical freedom in this state. We still don't have any protections from, the vaccine manufacturers have protections. Businesses have protections if they force the vaccines on employees. The government has civil liability protections, but we still don't have protections. All these other states, Republican states like Florida, who I'm going to talk about later on property taxes, have done it themselves. The Governor DeSantis and the legislature did it themselves. They had the guts and courage to stand up and say, no, you can't do this. Governments, businesses, people can't do this. And yet we're 6 years post-COVID and we have a supposedly supermajority Republican House and Senate and Republican governor. We still don't have freedoms and protections as it pertains to what happened 6 years ago. It's crazy.
That's a good point. Okay, so I want to make the point also here that you're running for treasurer for the state of Ohio. And I got a picture here. So you're going up against Christina Rogner and yourself there, Jay Edwards.
I
And
got to
that's
say, AI did me dirty in that picture. I don't know what that is.
well, what is it? It's called AI. That's what it's called. AI. You should see. I know some of the pictures I use once in a while. I'll throw myself in there for AI, and I'll say, "Who is that?" It doesn't even look like me. I know, but hey, that's blame AI. Okay.
Yeah.
So now we're talking the Ohio Treasurer. That could be you, the state's chief financial officer. It's a constitutional statewide elected official. Key responsibilities include collecting and safeguarding taxes and fees, managing state investments, and acting as the custodian of public funds. Let's see here. More specifically, the treasurer functions as Ohio's banker and chief investment officer, overseeing the investment and debt portfolios that are pretty large in Ohio. Pretty large.
Yeah, it's about $30 billion. It's, the simple way of explaining this, because, it's not the sexiest job in the world. A lot of people don't know what the state treasurer does. The simplest way to explain it is when people pay their taxes, whether it's sales tax, income tax, or any fees that the state collects, it hits the state treasurer's office first. And before that money goes out the door for what the legislature or the governor has appropriated that money for, there's a period of time before that money goes out the door. The state treasurer really invests those funds and places a lot of those funds in public deposits and gets a return on investment. The number one rule, the golden rule of the state treasurer's office is you can't lose the state money. But that's really to simplify it. For what the state treasurer does is we collect that money, and we make sure to invest that money, and we make sure we don't lose money for when that money goes out the door for the projects. Which right now, there seems like in the last, especially in the last year, the state has done a lot as far as pet projects all over the state, including a $1.7 billion they've set aside to build football stadiums. And, I'm from Appalachia, and so I might speak a little differently and more bluntly and more honestly, but most people where I live, because of their property taxes and their utility bills right now, will never be able to afford to buy a ticket to go to the taxpayer-funded stadium.
Yeah, and plus it'd be quite a ride for you, too, to go all the way to a game. I mean, I'm not saying you couldn't do it, but it would be a long drive, that whole fiasco with the football stadium and everything, that's crazy, yeah. But that's interesting the way you just said there, because I wasn't really sure what the treasurer does, but you're saying that you collect all the tax money and it sits for a little while. Is that right? And so instead of it just sitting, you invest it, right?
Yeah, yes, and most of that money ends up in public deposits. And one of the pitches that I've been making is, about 85% of that money goes to the national banks. So the one example I always use right now, all the banks fight for public deposits. It's safe money for them, allows them to leverage more money, allows them to loan out more money. About 85% of Ohio's funds sits in the major big conglomerate banks, JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, all these banks. And, number one, when you give those big banks that money, you can't even ensure that the money they're going to loan out as a result of those funds is staying in the state of Ohio, number one. Number two is, while those big banks have come around now because they got a new head man in charge in D.C. and Trump, who signed an executive order on day one of the debanking and ESG stuff, I don't think we can rely on that protection forever. They're playing nice because of the politics of today. It wasn't that long ago under the Joe Biden administration, the Bank of America debanked the Trump Organization and debanked Turning Point USA and debanked the National Rifle Association and won't give loans to certain organizations unless their board makeup is a certain number of LGBTQ people or if you're a natural gas company in Eastern Ohio, you can't get a loan because you don't subscribe to the Green New Deal or whatever the case may be. I don't see why we're not taking that money, and instead of investing it in the big banks, why we don't do more in our local community banks that we have all over the state that hold our morals, that hold our values, that aren't playing these political games and discriminating against conservatives when it's advantageous for them, depending on who's in D.C. representing them at that time. And so that's kind of my big pitch is let's keep that money in the state of Ohio. And then secondly, because we are the custodial, because we have a fiduciary responsibility for the taxpayer money, why is none of our statewide office holders commenting on some of these things? Why are none of them talking about stadium funding? Why are none of them talking about what's going on in South Columbus with Somali fraud? Why is none of them talking about what's going on in Clark County and Springfield, Ohio with the Haitians right now, which seems like the governor doesn't understand what the definition of temporary is? Why is it that everybody is worried about offending? If I say this, then the governor will get upset with me and he won't endorse me in this election, and this donor might not give to me this year, and everybody's worried about their tiptoeing around. I'm so sick of that. I don't agree with everybody on everything, but I do have a backbone and do have the guts to speak up and say things when I see something wrong. And quite frankly, as a statewide office holder, all the governor's constituents, all the auditor's constituents, all the current state treasurer's constituents will be my constituents. I think it's my obligation and my fiduciary responsibility to give an opinion on how the legislature or the governor is spending our taxpayer money. And I think, it's amazing how many times I go around the state and people aren't aware that we just gave the Cleveland Browns $600 million, and $1.7 billion was set aside for stadium funding. That every statewide office holder should be talking about these things, but yet no one will.
Oh, no, that's a really good point. I want to ask you another question here, is because you were a state rep,
yes,
and I notice that when, we'll have state reps that go in there for the first time, they just newly elected.
Yes.
And they go into gung-ho, strong, conservative, grassroots, the whole thing, and after a couple of years, they're just like everybody else. And I got a feeling it's, the speaker or whoever the speaker of the House is, they must apply a certain amount of pressure to these people because it's like, hey, conform or we can replace you. All right, so talk about that a minute. How strong of an influence is that?
So every state rep or every state senator has an issue at their hands when it comes to their election. Now, some of them may be a primary election where they're going to get primary if it's a super Republican district, or some of them it could be a general election that they're trying to win a tough seat. The House caucus collects all the money, right? They can get more money than a state rep can. Their campaign contribution limits are much higher. The speaker usually has some super PAC or some 501c4 that he has money that he's collecting and giving money out to these candidates. They will tell you, we won't support your race. We won't support your campaign unless you support some of our priorities of what we want to get across the finish line. So that happens a lot. I was fortunate enough, and I learned this early on in my state rep career. I was young when I ran. I had no political experience when I got there. I maybe thought I knew too much and had to learn quite a bit. But what I did know right off the bat was I was going to go around and raise my own money and was never going to allow me to be dependent upon the caucus. It's the same as welfare. If you're dependent on the system to get by, you're never going to get off the system. And right now, these members, because they don't raise their own funds, because they don't work their district hard enough, because they don't answer constituent calls and try to help the people that are arguing with them in their district of trying to do things for them, they need all the help they can get and all the money they can get. And so they got to curry favor to the people that holds the purse strings, and that would be the Speaker of the House that's controlling the caucus resources.
All right, one last question, then I'm going to go around the horn here. I'll let Brian and Jonathan ask questions and stuff. But I want to know why you want to run for Ohio Treasurer.
I want to run for Ohio Treasurer. To be honest with you, I turned out at the end of 2024. I came home. I got a successful real estate company and do very well in the private sector. I've always had my fingers in a lot of things and dealt with things. And I kind of grew up in a business-minded family, and I kind of have that myself. I really decided, I had a lot of people asking me, thinking that I was going to run. I had my eyes on the treasurer's office before I even saw the whole musical chairs that takes place in Columbus. The reason that threw me into the race was when I saw the stadium funding. I mean, that really was a slap in the face to me. That was a slap in the face to the people I spent a long time representing. It's a slap in the face to all areas of the state. And I decided that, we're going to have 8 years of this current speaker, it seems like, that's going to be, doing some of these things that I disagree with, that pretends to be MAGA publicly, and we'll do all these sorts of things. But then when you look at the policies and the things you said, he's not. And so I want to have that voice. I want to go to Columbus. I'm not going there to try to attack people. That's not my main goal. I'm going there to talk about issues that face everyday Ohioans all over the state. And I hope we're going to talk about property taxes, because that's a big issue too, that it's something that I cannot believe the legislature didn't really address. They claim they addressed it on these 6 bills. They did about this much. It really didn't do a whole lot of anything. And so, I want to talk about these big issues. I'm a populist. I came in with Trump. I'm a Trumper. I'm a diehard Trumper. I think we Republicans need to get more in line with some of the things that Donald Trump's trying to do, instead of pretending that they're Trumpers when they're publicly. But when it comes to the policies that they're trying to do, it just doesn't add up.
Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. I appreciate that. Property tax, when you mentioned property taxes, my ears perked up. And have you signed the petition, Jay?
I have.
The petition to a bond.
Brian, I've actually signed 2. I signed one up in Hawking County accidentally because I was up there for a ball game before I announced I was running for state treasurer outside of a diner, and I realized the petition was for Hawking County. And then we have a guy down here in Athens County that's signing them and working extremely hard and showing up to local businesses. And I ended up meeting up with them and getting a proper one signed.
Great. We appreciate that. We'll make sure that all of our zone leaders and the circulators know that Jay Edwards has signed a petition. That's more than Vivek Ramaswamy has done. He has, to this point, chosen not to support the average citizens being priced out of their homes, which is unfortunate. there's really nothing that you can do as treasurer, is there? Really, on this whole property
Other
tax
than-
thing, it is all legislators. Is that correct?
It really is, but other than being a voice, and I think that's most important. You know, I think when you get into this discussion, this problem really goes back to 2011 time frame, and I might have a little different perspective than you guys do. I go back to 2011 when John Kasich cut a lot of the local government funds. I get it. There are some local governments that need to cut their spending tremendously. There's a lot of waste, especially when you get into Franklin and Cuyahoga and Hamilton County and the cities of Columbus, Cincinnati, and Cleveland, and Akron and Toledo. There's a lot of waste. They got DEI departments. They got all kinds of nonsense. Who knows what the heck they're doing? But I go back to 2011 when John Kasich cut the local government funds in half. He had to. I don't want to give John Kasich props. He had to at that time because of the financial situation we were in. But what's kind of bothering me right now is I'm going around and talking about property taxes all over the state. I have such a big issue by the fact that local governments have fought the state for years of saying, you don't fund us. You tell us, you give us these unfunded Band-Aids. You tell us we got to have a county JFS office. We have to have a county children's services office. We have to fund indigent defense. We have to fund our county courthouses and all these functions. And every year at 911, they have to have a 911 center. They have to have fire and police and all this sort of stuff. The state demands all these things, but then we don't fund them. And so for years, the locals have been against the state. And I've been arguing with our local government elected officials all over the state on this issue, because now you got them rowing in the same direction. Now they're defending the state on this issue. They're in the same boat as the state on this issue of saying you can't do this because it takes all our money away. But I've been trying to educate them and saying, no, your argument is with the state. This is a state problem. This isn't your problem. This is a state problem.
100% agree.
The state needs to fund you. And the only person I've really seen, I've followed you guys quite a bit, is Mr. Plechnik up there, county commissioner I chat with on Facebook occasionally. He seems to be the only one that's really got this, and they're, the governor comes out and says, we'll have to have a 20% sales tax. That's ridiculous. First off, we have no idea where we're at financially. The first thing we need to do is cut out all the stadium funding, cut out all the pet projects, cut out all the Medicaid fraud, cut out the Somali fraud, cut out all this sorts of stuff, and then see where we are. Also cut a lot of state government. We have a ton of state Medicaid expenses. The state Medicaid is a Pac-Man of our budget. It's ridiculous. We've got to cut these sorts of things, and then we find out where we're at. It's similar to having a water leak. The first thing you do with the water leak, you shut off the water, then you diagnose the problem. I don't know why we're still sitting here saying we're going to have to figure out how to come up with $24 billion. First, we have to figure out how much money is fraud and waste, and then we can figure out how much we got to raise to. And if we do, then we can go to some income tax base or some sales tax base or something to figure out how to fund these local governments and our public schools. Public schools is another one. They're not all the same. Columbus City Schools is woke. They're doing all kinds of crazy stuff. We also have very conservative school districts all over the state that are doing a lot of good things on a very tight budget. So I just wish more local elected officials would realize you guys aren't attacking them. You're actually making the same argument that they've been making for years, in that the state needs to really chip in and fund the functions of what government is supposed to be, and not be funding all these projects.
Jay, that's 100% correct. We just discovered in the last couple of weeks that the state of Ohio is number one in something, and that is they're number one in the country of state funding for public libraries. They have been spending more money on public libraries than they have for the local government funds. So that tells me you're right. Back in 2011, Kasich to cover, I think it was a $7 or $8 billion hole in the budget. That's when he cut the spending, but they've never brought it back. And so now you are correct. It's up to our local representatives to get to the state legislators and say, change your thinking. We need police and fire more than we need public libraries. Public libraries are probably in 10 years, they're going to be a thing of the past. But what they have done in the public libraries, they've had mission creep. It's just to be relevant in the community. But when I go in some of the public libraries and I see some of the books that they're offering for young children, I'm not happy with it. And I keep saying, well, why do I have to spend my money on a public library that does not have the same values that I have. So prioritize them, and if people want to use it.
Drag show story hour. This is what's really been going on since 2011. State lawmakers, including myself, we go around the state and beat our chest and say, "Oh my God, we're so conservative. We cut your income taxes." And if you sit down and really talk to an individual, you say, "How much we cut your income taxes this year?" "Oh, well, you saved me about $500 on my income taxes, but my property taxes went up $2,000. And we as state lawmakers, we somehow in our mind have been able to separate this out of thinking, well, that individual now is probably happy with the state, but now he's mad at his local government. When in reality, these people, they don't know any difference. All they know is they paid the government more money, more $1,500 more money. They aren't able to figure this out. So my one plea to this conversation is more local government elected officials need to talk and understand and place the blame where it should be. It's not on them. We're not blaming them. Some of them, do they need to make cuts? Yes, absolutely. I'm sure there's a lot of counties, especially the bigger ones, that are doing a lot of this. Some of them need to realize what Commissioner Plechnik has realized. We're not attacking them. We're attacking the state of Ohio and saying, hey, state of Ohio needs to step up and make sure we fund the original founders of the state and of the country, the actual provisions that say what the government is supposed to be used for, roads, police, fire, these sorts of things, and get rid of all this other stuff. And so that's kind of my plea of what I wanted to talk about. I wish more locals would step up and realize the enemy here is the state, not them.
I agree completely. And I also think that the role of government is not to be in the business of property valuations. If you didn't have property taxes, I can't imagine how many, hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars, are going to be saved because the public sector has outgrown the private sector's ability to pay for the services. So we need, as Commissioner Plechnik says, we've got to cut the spending. At all levels. But the one question we get is, Brian, how are you going to replace the $20 to $24 billion in property taxes? And I asked Vivek Ramaswamy directly, and I said, well, how are you going to replace the $10.7 billion in income tax when you eliminate the income taxes? His response was to me a little flippant, and it was, well, we're going to replace it the same way you're going to replace the property tax money. So he didn't have an answer either. But it's amazing to me that the average citizen has never been clamoring to eliminate the income tax, but a lot of the big money donors would love to have their income tax eliminated.
Yeah, and if you eliminate that, if you eliminate that, 1 second here, if you eliminate that, that's another $10 billion or $12 billion that they got to come up with. And like you said, where are they going to get that money from? But that doesn't seem to be an issue at all. So that's a good thing.
All. And quite frankly, we've cut income taxes a lot. As I was chair of the finance committee, I always tell people I've traveled all over the state. I've never had any buddy, business guy, millionaire, billionaire come up to me and thank me for cutting their income taxes. The average home buyer right now, first-time home buyer, is 39 years old in this country. One of the biggest impediments to home buying right now is property taxes. So if we really want to go after the populism movement, if we really want to go after younger Ohioans, younger conservatives, get more young people to get in a home and start a family and all the things conservatives claim that they're for, property tax is a big impediment to that.
Yeah, and this is how you solve the whole issue, guys, right here.
Sales tax would go up to 17, 18, 19%. 20% sales tax in the state of Ohio
so embarrassing.
On products that you buy. So it would just be absolutely devastating.
Absolutely devastating.
When your so-called Republican governor is fighting more against tax elimination and property tax elimination than he is Somali fraud that's taking place in South Columbus or the Haitians in Springfield, we got a real problem in this state. It's something needs done about it, and unfortunately, nobody's talking about it other than us on these podcasts. But no elected official, statewide office holder is saying these things, and it's amazing the relief I hear from the fact that I just have the guts to post about it on Facebook right now. It's infuriating.
Yeah, it's a breath of fresh air to have somebody, a politician, actually speaking out on it. You better believe it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, real quick, one second, Jonathan. One second. I'm going to let you talk, but I just want to read this. They will get the money from fraud and waste
waste.
Somalia Daycare Center fraud. It's time they became stewards of our tax dollars. There's a lot of things that need to be investigated. Lots and lots and lots.
Yep.
And keep chatting. If you guys chat, we'll post it up there. Go ahead.
All right, Doge, Ohio. All right, so we may have a first here. I may actually sign off early and go and find Jay Edwards. I'm ready to hop in my car and go and drive to where Jay Edwards is. You know how people feel like they wish they could make a clone of themselves? Everything I hear coming out of Jay Edwards' mouth is just, I have to take a pause and just take a deep breath because it's refreshing to hear somebody understand these things. These are the things that I've been talking about. If you know me, if you follow this show, you know that I make notes during the course of the show. I've got my handy pen and notepad here. I've probably got about 3 pages of notes, and I'd love to do a dedicated, like 2 or 3 hour segment with Jay Edwards. You're spot on. If you're concerned about the things that Jay Edwards is talking about in our state budget and how we're managing our funds, if you follow the show, you know that I'm ex-Wall Street. I've worked in prudent process and managing other people's money fiscally responsibly for decades. I've done it all over the country for state and local governments and universities, hospitals, endowments, you name it. There are very few places where it's worse than in state government. Whatever you hear described, I'm sorry to tell you, it's 10 times worse. I've been looking at Ohio, New York, Michigan, and states like California for decades. They are a major, major problem, and I love the idea of having somebody that understands that get into office from the outside. So, Jay, you're winning me over big time. A few things that I made in my notes here, going to the point that Brian was making about the cost to administer property taxes, because that's a hot button right now. There are all kinds of different compartments of the world of finance in the state of Ohio that we can and should drill down on. And I'd love to have Doge Ohio because all of it should be fair game. But when we look at property valuations and the idea that the state of Ohio is now it's gotten into the business of valuing people's properties. By the way, as a side note, you see that Unwoke.Academy at the bottom. Go to Unwoke.Academy and watch the episode. It's a market minute that I did on BlackRock and companies like them buying residential properties, which drives up artificially home values. It was a big win on platforms, and it tells a lot about valuations. But just for Ohio to administer that is an estimated $800 million a year. So all the county treasurers, all of the people involved in trying to assess those taxes and collect property taxes, that is a huge cost in and of itself. So when we talk about trying to come up with 24 million, well, first of all, you've heard me say it, I'm going to say it again. Pre-COVID, our state budget was $67 billion. We're now north of $100 billion. And I don't know about everybody else, I'm not noticing roads and bridges and infrastructure looking all that much better. So where is the money going? We need to Doge all this stuff. One other thing, when it comes to the undue influence of those global banks that Jay Edwards is talking about, and I've had occasion to interact with virtually all of them, all the ones that you name, plus some other international players. I've done transactions with all of them. I know the ins and outs, and you're absolutely spot on. There's an episode just released last week from American Energy Works. I was their guest. They are based out of, they're part of American Energy Institute. They released a podcast last week talking about BlackRock in particular and their influence on energy and energy infrastructure. All of this stuff is huge money engineered to steer us into things like climate change, green energy initiatives, and those kinds of things, because there's huge money to be made. When we take that away, like Texas is doing, Texas is fighting right now to take away some of that money and the ability of manipulating state budgets to pad the pockets of bad guys. That means things like stadiums. It means things like energy, sweetheart energy deals, and all those kinds of things. Ohio is packed with them. Jay Edwards, if you can get in there and clean this up, I'm all for it. I love it.
Well, we're gonna talk about that, and quite frankly, there's no reason that state treasurer, when the budget is coming due every 2 years, when the state's working on their operating budget, they do a 2-year budget, and it's forecasting for 2 years ahead. And the governor has his folks called the Ohio Office of Budget Management, or OBM, The legislature has their folks with the Legislative Service Commission. They have economists in there that do all the projections. I really want the Treasurer's Office to begin to have our economists come over and give projections for the next 2 years. That'll give us say on the spending and be able to talk more about the spending that's being projected. And there's a lot of fine details in there. But no, I agree with you. The state legislature needs to pass a bill right now, giving the state auditor more control of all state financing. I'm told there's some issues there. I've talked to Keith Faber about it. I was asking Keith why he's not going after these Somali daycares, and a lot of it is in the law, and he gave me some provisions in the Higher Revised Code of why he can't do that. The legislature really needs to pass the bill and allow our state auditor to be a true state auditor and go after all taxpayer money and be able to doge Ohio and go after some of this stuff. You brought up a couple other things that I just want to bring up. Number one, we also need to get out all the carve-outs. We have special carve-outs in our law for taxes across the board, whether it's sales tax, income tax, all these sorts of things. The thing you're going to see right now on the data center conversation is, number one, the state up the number of signatures required for referendums against local communities if a community says they don't want that data center, virtually making it impossible for local communities to say we don't want that here. But also on top of that, my big fear here is if a community wants a data center, whatever, they can get a data center. They can't drive up energy prices, and they can't get big tax abatements. That's the other problem with property taxes right now is we give out all these tax abatements. So this multi-billion-dollar company that probably is owned, investor-owned, private equity, BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street, probably has their fingers in there, are now getting these tax abatements, which then drives up everybody else's property taxes around them. We've got to get rid of all these special carve-outs. Whoever worked on the income tax from a long time ago really made a mistake by not requiring the lower income folks up to 30 or 40,000 pay zero income tax. I'm a fan of everybody's got skin in the game. Having a flat tax rate, income tax rate. If we're going to have an income tax, having a flat tax rate, everybody pays a little bit, make it as broad as possible, and no special carve-outs. Get rid of the special carve-outs. We also haven't talked about this group called Jobs Ohio. Jobs Ohio takes our liquor profits. They are considered a private entity. We have no oversight. The one thing that runs through the state treasurer's office is the Ohio checkbook program. Every local government should be required to be on the Ohio checkbook program. I don't see any reason that Jobs Ohio shouldn't also be on the Ohio checkbook program. So we can go in and say, we get to view every dollar they take in, every one of their expenses. It's very simpler. Josh Mandel started this program. It was a great idea. It was the biggest thing to come to the state treasurer's office over the last 20 years. It really needs simplified. The website, you got to be a Rhodes Scholar to kind of understand the website. We're going to go in there and simplify that. And we're going to try to make a big push of every township, library, anything that gets taxpayer money needs to be on the Ohio checkbook so that people like us and the people that are watching your program can log in and see where their tax money is being spent.
I think that's great because also
Joe, can I attach a question to that?
Yeah, one thing with the schools now, I noticed like here in Cleveland Heights and that, I don't think that they're part of that checkbook system at all. So maybe as treasurer, you could enforce that because if it's optional, some of the worst school systems that are hiding the salaries and all that, they're just going to say, no, we don't want to be a part of it. So I don't know. Maybe that's something that you can enforce.
I also, with school systems, I don't see a reason why. I'm down here in Athens County. We have very conservative school districts. Outside of one, we have 4 really good conservative school districts. We have 5 total public schools. Why do we need 5 superintendents? Why do we need 5 school treasurers? Each one of these guys, and I get along with all of them, but they're all making $150,000, $175,000 a year. It's things
great
like
benefits
this
and everything, and they hardly show up for work. Now, here's the thing, Jay. You're saying, why do you need it? Just ask one of them, and they'll tell you. They'll tell you real quick. Yes, you have to hire us. That's a cream of the crop job, 150, 60, 70, 80,000, all those benefits and everything. You show up for work or you don't show up. Nobody knows if you've been there or not. What's up?
All right, so 2 things. That's a prime time opportunity for me to again reference the Ohio Academic Accountability Project. Omar Tarazi and I built that years ago. It's still there. It's waiting for anybody in any district in Ohio to look up and find out all about the finances in your local school district or any school district that you might be curious about. You can also pull up academic proficiency scores in all kinds of meaningful ways. There are videos. I've done 2 tutorial videos that you'll find on Protect Ohio Children That's protectohiochildren.net, or actually .org.net.com. They'll go to the same place. It's AAP for short, Ohio Academic Accountability Project. The thing that I wanted to ask Jay about is this whole Jobs Ohio thing. It still really was a big smack in the face that even though their contract was not due, it was not ending for another, I want to say 3 or 4 years, they renewed the contract. Our Ohio legislature voted artificially way early to renew the contract, for another 15 years. So I think all those billions of dollars from liquor tax flows to Jobs Ohio, which have done a horrible job. What are we, like 37th or 38th in the nation for new jobs? They're not doing their job at Jobs Ohio in my book, but somehow miraculously got this 15-year contract extension way early. So what in the world do you think was behind that move?
Yeah, and they don't even go through the legislature on it. They go through the controlling board, which are members of the House and Senate and the governor's office. And the funny thing about this, Jonathan, is I served on controlling board when they initially tried to do this. They couldn't get it done because they were scared to death of the questions that I was going to ask them on controlling board. I think they probably had the votes, but they were worried about the questions. They were scared to death. They met with me a ton. And if you ever want to go down a rabbit hole on Facebook, type in Jay Edwards Jobs Ohio. I've gone after them and really attacked them over the years. But they waited until the first controlling board after I got term limited, and it went through like that. So it shows that, I was the impediment, which I kind of take pride in that. But, here's an organization that has no oversight. They're considered a private entity. We don't even know if the people that work there have financial interest in the companies they're given to. And I'll give you an example. They give billions of dollars to Intel, which we don't even know if Intel is going to happen. There's no way of us clawing that money back. Some of the decision makers there could have owned stocks in Intel. We don't know this because they're a private entity. On top of that, we know they run a $24 billion payroll or $24 million payroll of the people that just work there. So that's how much money they're taking. We don't know how much money they're getting in liquor profits. We have no idea. So, I just want sunshine on this organization. I can tell you every time I approached them about potentially getting a small employer to expand by 10 or 15 jobs in Southeast Ohio, I was always told no. Seems like all their money goes to the big cities. They'll write hundreds of millions of dollars of checks. By the way, I just saw a post the other day that said Jobs Ohio is offering free Lyft rides for individuals on St. Patrick's Day. So they're worried about the drunks on St. Patrick's Day or the people out drinking. I'm not saying it's not a bad thing to do. How does that help economic development in the state of Ohio? I have no idea. That's what they're doing with their money. We have no say on what they're doing with our money. Again, maybe this money could be used for lowering people's property taxes or figuring out how to get rid of property taxes. So, we have all these different things and fingers in all these different things, and we don't really have a say in it. I mean, your state lawmakers have no say in what's going on at Jobs Ohio and the billions of dollars that they get every year.
Well, it seems it's a little deceptive because it's called Jobs Ohio, so you think right away that it's a state agency. But you're saying that their payroll is $24 million? Is that what you said?
$24 million is what I've been told. Again, you can't verify this. That's documents I got from internal folks when I was in the state legislature. They run a $24 million payroll just for the people at Jobs Ohio. I can't imagine, especially during COVID, when liquor profits went through the roof. You imagine how much money they were taking in during that time.
Can I clarify something? Is that $24 million? That's not coming. We're not paying them $24 million, are we? Since they're a private company, are they generating?
Well, if you buy liquor, they're not a private company. How they work? What they did was they call themselves a private company. They bought the rights to the liquor profits for the state of Ohio. So anybody that buys liquor, when you pay your sales tax on that liquor, it goes to Jobs Ohio. They use that taxpayer money, and they're considered a private entity. They contracted with the state to get this money. They're a private entity. You can't really public records them and figure out. Not only public records, I was a state lawmaker. I couldn't even get information from them on what they'll do. And the reason why, they'll say, well, it's proprietary information. If it gets out there, then it allows other states to know exactly the tools that we have, and that'll put us at an economic disadvantage.
Yeah, what a bunch of BS that is, because we are at an economic disadvantage because we're not building anything in this state, and the taxes we're number 43, according to this one graph I saw, in in taxes. So, yeah, Jobs Ohio sounds like a scam. It is a scam. It is. We looked into it a bit ourselves, and I was like the same thing. It's like like Jonathan said, their contract was extended way prematurely, and then the controlling board. I actually watched the meeting on the controlling board because I had no idea what a controlling board was, and it's just a rubber stamp. They just rubber stamp everything. It seems like.
A flashback in time, controlling board is how they actually expanded Medicaid in the state of Ohio. When John Kasich did Medicaid expansion, that actually didn't pass through legislation. It ran through the controlling board.
Okay,
which I think
there's
is
a problem.
Complete constitutional crisis.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's a major
wait a minute.
problem. That's a
Wait,
major problem when you have these boards that have that much power and they're not legislators. We vote for
Correct.
the legislators, not for these guys to be a controlling board. Well, the controlling board is legislators, I guess, most of them. I don't know. But Jobs Ohio, they're just going to rubber stamp Jobs Ohio or some of this other stuff, and then it becomes a law. Or it's where the money goes.
There's no checks and balances at all. I mean, I didn't know anything about the Jobs Ohio. Now what Jay's saying, this is absurd. There's no one looking out for the average citizen. So you have a company that pays the state to collect all the profits from the liquor. And then they're not they don't have to tell us anything because it's all proprietary. That sounds like the real estate appraisers. They can't tell us how they value the property because it's proprietary. So you're paying a third party money to control our destiny, and they're not accountable to us. We got the Boston Tea Party all over the place.
Let me give you two more examples. I see your next guest is coming on. So let me give you two more examples. Jobs Ohio gave money to a glass plant in Dayton, Ohio, that was caught 5 years later hiring illegal Chinese immigration of folks. All the federal folks came in on them and found they were hiring cheap labor over there. Again, we can't claw back any of that money. A second thing that happened here recently is Jobs Ohio is deeply ingrained in the firing of OSU president Ted Carter because he was trying to get some money and sweetheart deals to a podcast of a girl that he had a romantic relationship with, which is why he resigned. Jobs Ohio was funding that podcast at $15,000 per podcast. Wow. They've given her, I think, close to $60,000, and now they're put out public statements trying to say they're clawing that money back. And all you got to do is go to Jobs Ohio on Twitter and scroll down here the past week. They openly admitted it, and they're saying they're going to try to go get their money back. Again, that's something we found out after the fact because of the firing of Ted Carter, because Ted Carter resigned. We would have never known that they were paying this woman $15,000 a podcast if it wasn't for the Ted Carter thing. So how many other things are going on that we have no idea about?
Oh, yeah, that's
More
right.
importantly,
That
how
was
do we
just a
get
couple
that
of
for
things that
Ohio
you found out. But
political news?
$15,000 per podcast.
Yeah, we want that for
How do I
Ohio
get a hold of
political
these
news.
guys?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you gotta have a romantic relationship with the president of Ohio State in order for that to happen.
That would be a no thanks.
Hey, I want to say one more thing, and this is more geared towards Jonathan. And Jonathan, I'd love, Joe, please connect me and Jonathan after this, because you brought up your financial background and working on stuff. This is like really geeky stuff, but I have an idea of something for the state treasurer's office, and it is the local townships, counties, cities, and the state of Ohio spend a ton of money funding public employee retirement system or pension funds. They take money, and our public pension funds are way underfunded. They're about 60% funded right now. I have an idea, and I'll be honest. The idea came from a guy named Scott Bessent, who's Trump's Treasury Secretary. I was in D.C. a couple weeks ago, got a chance to meet with him. You guys are making news because he pulled me aside in a room after and brought up the property tax situation going on in Ohio. So kudos to you guys. You got the Treasury Secretary's attention. But he brought up an idea to me of these cities have a bunch of assets that have a ton of value. So like a water treatment plant, a sewer plant, these sorts of things that are sitting there right now. He's got a way of figuring out how to use the equity in those fixed assets, placing them inside of a pension fund, and getting those pension funds up to 90 to 100% funded without having the city to put any more money in there, using the equity on that and saving the state a ton of money. And Scott Bessent's exact idea was, here's a way for you to end property taxes in Ohio, because these cities, instead of them being reliant on property taxes, that's just going to save them money from having to fund their pension systems by taking these. And it makes sense. These assets have a ton of equity of putting them inside the pension fund. So, Jonathan, I'd love to pick your brain on that sometime offline.
That's exactly my wheelhouse. I'm actually an ERISA subject matter expert. That's what I did on Wall Street. So, but just for our audience, none of this constitutes any investment recommendation. And if you were following the issue of non-traded assets inside of ERISA-governed plans, and that means things like 401k plans, that's something Trump is working on and something that I've provided comment on separately. Jay, I'd love to. I've yet to meet anybody that can out-geek me in this arena. I think we'll have a splendid conversation offline later. Thanks for joining us on the show. We appreciate it.
Hey, thank you guys very much. I appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, Jay. Thank you again.
Thank you very
appreciate
much,
you
Jay.
coming on. Really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Give you some applause. All right,
Yeah.
Kent, you're with me here, right? Kent.
Yep.
All right. Let's talk about Ohio political news now. Let's promote ourselves, and then Victor, you're coming on next, man. You're coming on next. So hang in there.
Yes, sir.
All right. So what's up? What's up with our?
Okay, so
OPM?
yeah, let's make sure that if you are on any platform, especially on Facebook or on Rumble, you can definitely send stars over on Facebook. Make sure to subscribe and to like us on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube. Follow us on Rumble and X. Also go to ohiopoliticalnews.com/shop for all the gear and the mugs. Also, please support us because we also on Rumble. Make sure to go to our locals and join us. It's only a cup of coffee, $5 a month. It does support us because this does cost money. We're trying to grow. We are growing, which is great. The numbers are all going up, and I appreciate that's a huge, amazing. I mean, we're going to be hitting about 30,000 on Facebook shortly, and that's a huge number for us, and we're going to keep building as long as we can. Also, make sure to hit. If you are interested in any kind of sponsorships or doing anything on OPN, let us know. Go to Joe at ohiopoliticalnews.com, or you can go to Kent at ohiopoliticalnews.com. Reach out to us. We can, we are growing, so let your company grow with us. Also, if you can, let us know if you have any events coming up in your area that we could maybe live stream. We have the technology to go basically anywhere with the technology allowed, but we can live stream your event, and just let us know through those emails, and we can get out there and share the news to everybody in Ohio. But yeah, thanks, Joe.
All right, thanks a lot, Kent. Yeah, appreciate that a lot. All right, let's bring our next guest on. Oh, we don't have any time for him. Sorry, Victor. We'll see you next time.
We'll see you guys. Good times.
No way. We'll make time for Victor.
Yeah, we're gonna make time for Victor. That is
We're
for
excited
darn
to have
sure.
Victor on.
How you doing?
Appreciate that. I'm awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, did
Glad
you?
to be here.
I always ask somebody when they're in front of a bookcase, did you read all the books behind you?
I have the ones that are mine. The ones that are my wife's, no. So if you see Twilight or whatever back there, that was not me. I promise you. But the ones that are biographies, self-development, the other.
Yeah, most of
let
them
me
you've
just say
read.
it this way.
Yeah.
The good ones. Yeah, the good ones are mine.
good
Yeah, the
books,
other
yeah.
ones are my wife's.
I always
I don't.
I don't have a bookcase behind me, but I'm going to put one behind me.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
not that I read the books, but it makes people think, hey, this guy's kind of
Nick's
smart.
real
you know?
smart.
What you need,
Yeah,
Joe?
Hey, so what we want to do is we've got to talk about Venezuela and the dictatorship, the communism, and all that with Venezuela. And I want to give a little bit of a background here on Venezuela, if I could, especially with the Nicolas Maduro presidency. So just to let people know, because Maduro is in America right now. I don't think he's having the best time, but he's in America because Trump snuck in there with the special forces and everything, went to his compound, dragged him out of bed. He was in his PJs, okay? And he had little fuzzy slippers on, too, from what I've read. Anyhow, they grabbed him, grabbed his wife. You know, they're back here. He's going to prison for as long as he lives, I'm sure. But let's get a little background on this guy. First of all, he became the president of Venezuela in 2013 after Hugo Chavez died. Okay, so he ran and won. Now, there's been nothing but corruption with Maduro, okay? Massive corruption. We'll get into that. You know better than I do, okay? But I want to just give an overview here. Now, some of the things he did real quick here. Maduro's regime embezzled funds from the state oil company. So he set up this massive state oil company and made sure that he got rich off of it, incredibly rich. In 2020, the U.S. Department, the United States here, indicted Maduro for narcotics terrorism. And he also was in partnership with multiple guerrilla groups and things you would call as drug trafficking cartels. Okay, he was
Right.
He was with a bunch of cartels too, and then he set up this food distribution program, became rich on it. But I don't think he gave any of the food to the Venezuelans. All right, hyperinflation. This blew my mind. One of the worst ever recorded. The economy, which is 98% oil, reliant upon oil, the prices collapsed in 2014. So he's only in his really first or second year. He began printing money, and the hyperinflation went up over 1,000,000%. That's not good. So a lot of starvation, and 8 million Venezuelans said, we're getting the heck out of here. 8 million. Now, here's something interesting with Maduro, and this also piggybacks off why Trump kidnapped him, I think. And now, obviously, there's enough reasons, because he kills people, and anybody who goes up against what he has to say politically, they're dead. But he had to run again in 2018, and everybody hated him for obvious reasons, because everybody's starving to death, everybody's leaving. He won in 2018 with 68% of the vote. 68% of the vote.
Joe, you got to air quote that. One.
Yeah, I mean, come on.
Well, he was using Dominion voting machines too, and that's no lie.
Yes.
That is no lie. And here's one
Great
other.
coincidence.
He won this award, and you're probably not even aware of it, Victor, but he won this award. It is, in 2016, he won Person of the Year award. Maduro did. Do you know what that Person of the Year award, who put that out? The Organized Crime and Corruption Reporting Project. Every year, they give the most corrupt person of the year an award. And so he took it in 2016. So that's what we're dealing with. How are you? Good to see you. I want to give people a little background on some of that stuff. Tell us a little bit about you, if you could.
Yeah, of course, man. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm originally from Venezuela. I've been in the United States since the year 2000. So been here longer than I was there. And yeah, I'm a husband. I'm a Christian. I'm a father. I have 4 awesome children and an awesome wife, and love them all dearly. And I have 2 degrees in materials engineering and chemistry. I worked as a chemist and an engineer for about 12 years, and then went into the financial industry. So I logged in the conversation a little late, but I'm gonna have to go back and listen to what you guys were talking about, because I'm a fan of the little bit that I heard from Jay and from John. So but yeah, I've owned a financial advice firm for about 13 years now, and absolutely best thing that that I've done professionally. We're blessed to help people, middle class people specifically, do better with their money. We base it on education, teach people what to do with the money they have and what to do with the money they don't have to. We prepare them to have some. We don't only work with the top 1%. We work with everybody. So so blessed to do that, and love this country. This is the best country on earth.
You better.
It's not
you
perfect.
Bet you. Yeah. Now,
it's not perfect, but it's great.
Yeah, it's not perfect, but compared to some of the other, I don't think there's another country as good as the United States. There isn't. There isn't. It's not perfect. It'll never be perfect. All right. I want to also do this, and this will get us into a discussion starter. But you had sent me a trailer of a movie, and also I saw where the guy who did the documentary was talking to the Washington Post. So this isn't very long, but I want to play this here for you.
And as for the objective of this negotiation, we have put as a priority a timeline for free and fair.
Yeah, so just to set the stage, this is the guy that did the movie. He put this movie together here.
If you saw the documentary presents the fight for free and fair elections of a nation that has been crushed by a dictatorship that became more and more brutal against the large majority of Venezuelans that were calling for free and fair elections. That has been our goal when we went out to the streets in 2014. That was the moment in which I was thrown into prison and sentenced to 14 years in prison.
Okay, he was sentenced to 14 years in prison. He didn't do all 14 years because he was doing this movie,
for
but he was
calling
sentenced to
protest
that.
for free and fair elections. That was the calling of thousands, hundreds of thousands of.
He was thrown in. I kind of cut him off a little bit. He was thrown in prison because he was advocating for for fair elections, and they weren't going to stand for that.
That the movie portrays very well, with different stories that portray the motivation, the frustrations, and the hopes of many different sectors of the Venezuelan people.
Now, this is some of the trailer here.
More than 3 million refugees, an economy in freefall.
Ha convocado una manifestación pacífica. Después dicen que uno es el violento.
Real quick, these guys right here, they're talking to the director of the movie, the documentary. He's just talking to them. And he said, hey, do you have any weapons? He's just talking to them, BSing a little bit with them. They said, all we have is our flag. That's it. And that we are we're protesting peacefully. And we'll watch what happens.
Bandera.
Venezuela is crumbling under the weight of Maduro's oppressive regime.
Are you honestly saying there is no hunger in Venezuela?
Yo le digo que ustedes han montado un estereotipo de una Venezuela que no existe.
Es simplemente que esto es una dictadura.
El gobierno tomó estrategia de crear miedo.
Opposition leader Juan Guaidó and alongside him Leopoldo López, jailed back in 2014.
Toda Venezuela está con los jóvenes venezolanos. ¡Que vamos a vencer!
Juan Guaidó swore himself in as interim president of Venezuela, undermining Maduro's mandate.
Venezuela no se arrodilla ante nadie. Venezuela se levanta.
Yeah, I think that was the guy, if I'm not mistaken, I think that was the guy who was running against Maduro in 2018.
2018.
And he lost, but everybody wanted to vote for him. Everybody wanted to vote for him. Is that? Go ahead.
This thing, Joe. He didn't lose. He didn't lose. He won. He won that election. You know what I mean?
Right.
And that documentary is so hard to watch. I waited. It came out in. I don't remember what year it came out, but I waited like 2-3 years to watch it. I watch that still, and I still get emotional, and I try not to. What my people have gone through, and I wasn't there, right? I've been here 26 years, but my family, My friends, the people who I love who are still there, the few people that I have left in the country who haven't left, they've suffered through that. They've been through it. So anytime I have a conversation with anybody, I try to be as objective as I can, but it's inevitably it's an emotional conversation, because these people who go and try to defend a dictator who has been responsible for so much death, damage, destruction, for everything in the country. It's like, okay, you have no idea what the heck you're talking about, buddy. So we can, and I know that a lot of people just have good intentions, and they repeat what the media tells them, but like, no, talk to the people who have people there, to the people who haven't been able to go back because of political persecution, right? Talk to us, we'll tell you. And if you don't mind, I'll say a couple of things at the beginning. When you mentioned that Maduro ran for the election after Chavez died, he actually was appointed. He was appointed by Chavez because he was the VP, and that's how he took over. There was a pre-election that we did in order to run the election to see if we wanted to even have an election for this guy to win or not. And that was, he lost. Like, it was something like 90% of the people didn't like him, because although Chavez was he was a bad dude, he was a bad person. He had great leadership skills. He had a lot of charisma. Again, I have a hard time saying anything positive about him because he's the one who started this whole thing. But he at least had, as far as his politics and policies, they were all garbage, complete garbage. None of them worked. He's a fan of Stalin and Marx and Fidel Castro, and that's his friends. But as bad as he was, Maduro was worse, and even people who liked Chavez ended up hating Maduro because, they felt it, they lived through it. And so, but the challenge was, Joe, and I'm sorry I'm kind of jumping around, when Leopoldo actually, he went to Kent State. He went here to school here in the United States, in Ohio. When he was taken as a political prisoner and Juan Guaido ran, we thought, okay, these people will get it done, right? We're going to run. And even if they steal the elections, like the regime steals the election, as we knew they were going to, because they've been doing that forever, at least when they steal it, our people, the opposition, that Juan Guaido and Leopoldo Lopez, they will call the people to go out to the street and protest and overthrow the illegitimate government. But unfortunately, once they lost, these quote-unquote leaders like Juan Guaido and Leopoldo Lopez, they kept their mouth shut, moved out of the country. So Juan Guaido lives in Miami playing pickleball every day. There are a lot of accusations of him having been bought by the regime. Leopoldo Lopez is in Spain doing the same thing, a lot of nothing. There's another guy, Enrique Capriles, who also ran against the regime, and he's also been shut up. So anyway, all this to say that every time there's been an election and we seem to have a leader that comes out and is going to run against the regime and it's going to do something good, they get shut down. But unfortunately, then they fold and they go, well, I guess this is it. So they're living, in exile with money from the regime. So except for
somebody like
Maria
Maduro.
Corina.
But somebody like Maduro, he's getting all this money that he shouldn't be grabbing. He's grabbing it from the oil, and he's grabbing it from that food fund. He's got gold that he's digging up for himself. So he's becoming incredibly wealthy, and then he's got the cartels working with him as well. And then he's shooting. It looks like he's shooting or killing any opposition, any political opposition. So your life is in danger right there. Right. And then there's no guns. I mean, in Venezuela, you protest because the government gives you a couple hours to protest or something, right? Is that how it works? Tell us a little bit about some of that in Venezuela.
Yeah, so the Constitution in Venezuela doesn't quite. It's not exactly like the Constitution here in the U.S., right? This is, again, the best Constitution on earth because it has the First and Second Amendment. So the second can help you protect the first, right? So there is freedom of expression in Venezuela, but there isn't a Second Amendment as such. So our right to bear arms in Venezuela is very limited. So it's all done by the government. And so you can get a firearm, but it's all regulated by the government, and it takes, I don't know, 6 months to a year to get one. And really, most civilians don't have them unless they had them from before the Constitution was changed by Chavez, somewhere in the early 2000s. He changed the Constitution, which if you want, we can get into that. But a couple of things that he did was unlimited reelection, unlimited terms. So that's pretty good. And the right to own property was kind of turned into a gray area that, the government can come in anytime and say, hey, that house looks real nice. It's a shame that you have it because now it's ours. And they literally took over people's property. And yeah. Like,
well, we talk about
I
that
could
whole
tell
property scenario here as well, with the property taxes going so high. We're hoping that doesn't, but it is kind of happening in this country as well. One quick question.
Joe,
go
just,
around.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I just want to wrap up one question. We'll go to you, Brian. We'll go around the horn. Let's just go around the horn because my memory is so bad. I forget what I'm going to say, even if I'm in the process of saying it. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. You've just confirmed what we have been saying with our property tax movement for a very long time, and that is that home ownership, private property, is the foundation of our freedom and liberty. So you've just confirmed that what the Venezuelan government did, they took that private property away. So there's no, you are merely just a serf. You are nothing if you do not have the opportunity for private property ownership. Would you agree with me?
Well, absolutely. And you don't have, and especially if you don't have the ability to defend it, then that's it, right? I can tell you of a personal example. Okay, so somebody who I know very, very close to me, that person's parents had something, I think it was 5 or 6, farms, huge farms that not only were their own, that they started from nothing. So if, by the way, if they wanted to do nothing with that land, that's their land because they bought it. So they have every right to do nothing with it. But they weren't only doing not doing anything. They were growing rice, wheat, a lot of food for that was distributed to people in the country, and they were overtaken by the government. That literally, like deuce and a halves, the military trucks would show up, full of people in the back, and those people were, some were military and some were, call it less fortunate citizens, and they said, hey, now this land belongs to them, and if you don't like it, you have us with the weapons. So the people who own these farms literally had to abandon, leave them there, and you can't, be physically in 5 spots at once anyway. So they just have to leave them. Things that they worked for their entire lives. People whose net worth, again, starting from zero. A lot of people who came to Venezuela got there after World War II and after the Spanish Civil War. People who had built something and it got to nothing because the government literally took it over and said, if you don't like it, you have us. We have weapons and you don't. So do something about it. So that's it.
Yeah, Joe, I'd like to make sure that we cut out that portion of our speech, because that is really, really important for us to get that across to the citizens of the state of Ohio. And I'd also like to make it available to the Amish community. I've been preaching about what's going to happen to the Amish community with these property taxes if it keeps on going. And we are on an unsustainable path in the state of Ohio. So thank you very much, Victor, for clarifying.
Of course,
that
sir.
for me.
Yes, pleasure.
All right, so Victor, welcome to the show. We're glad you picked Ohio. For anybody who is interested in this program and what we're talking about today, I encourage you, I'll tell you what I'll put in the show notes. A very good friend of mine, Lisa Chafee, interviewed Victor for a show that she does. It's a one-on-one podcast that actually led to me. I reached out to Lisa and said, I've got to meet this guy. I really want him on Ohio Political News. I'll put a link to Lisa's show. They have about an hour one-on-one discussion, and it's breathtaking. You need to listen to that. We're very limited in today's scope. I'm going to try to cover as much as possible and hopefully kind of pique some interest among Ohioans about some of the correlation. The first thing I'll say, it is it's been my understanding for most of my adult life that Venezuela is one of the most beautiful countries on the planet. it is breathtakingly beautiful. I hope to get there one day. I've never actually been to Venezuela. I've seen pictures, I've heard descriptions, and it may sound strange to hear, but even having never been there, I find myself struggling with emotion when I understand, I have a deep understanding of what happened between Chavez and Maduro and just the crushing. It was the destruction and dismantling and crushing of a beautiful society. And I am one of those people that's leaping for joy that Maduro is gone and taken away. And I have prayers for the people of Venezuela. I hope that they rebuild and become glorious and prosperous again. So a couple of things. The first I want to mention for our audience is I have a very strong personal suspicion that for many, many years, the U.S. government has been interacting with Hugo Chavez, Maduro, and others, and is intertwined in uncomfortable and really bad ways. I'm hoping that we're able to break that cycle and leave Venezuela to the Venezuelan people. Where it comes into Ohio politics, and Victor, I'm going to ask what specifically led you to Ohio. We'll try and recreate some of the amazing conversation that you had with Lisa Chafee. But in Ohio, I see similar objectives deployed in a different way because, actually throughout the United States, because government knows that we are not only armed, we're very well armed. And in fact, the U.S. citizenry form the largest military in the world. We are actually much larger and better armed, more armed than even our paid military. For that reason, we see our government working in ways like this climate action plans and things like it to usurp our control and take away private property. They're eroding our rights dramatically. So it's a different strategy toward the same result. And that's a big part of the reason I wanted to invite Victor onto the show. One last thing, I think that tagline at the bottom underneath Victor's name should be escaped. I forget what Joe put on there, but he escaped. And thank God you did. I wish more had, but I have great hope for the people of Venezuela. So why don't we start with a question? My question is, what specifically brought you to Ohio when you left Venezuela?
Dumb luck. I was going to college. I had 2.5 years of chemistry. That's what I was going to school for. Under me, I was going to the Universidad Central de Venezuela, which is a central university, best university in all of South America. And it's also, by the way, free, which we know it's not free, right? But public education in Venezuela at that point still was extremely high level, but all paid by oil dollars. So, the public education was funded by the government, subsidized. Obviously, that had a ton of challenges because these people were stealing so much money that then the money wasn't being given to the teachers and the resources. Anyway, going to school, my sister had graduated high school and wanted to come to the States to study English. And my aunt is a professor for a university in Venezuela that has a connection with Hocking College here in Nelsonville, in Hocking Hills. And so my sister made the connection with teacher up here, and then I just called home one weekend and said, hey, I don't think I'm going home this weekend. My mom said, hey, we found a place for a sister. Dad's wondering if you want to go for about 6 months and learn English. And I said, well, let me think about it. And she said, well, you have 10 seconds. And so on the phone, in 3 seconds, I said yes. I had no idea. The only thing I knew about Ohio was that Omar Vizquel played for the Indians, and so I figured, that's good enough. So I'll just come up here for that. And I mean, my goodness, best shortstop in history. So and so anyway, that's how I ended up here and went to school. Got my materials engineering degree here. Moved to Columbus when I finished school. Got a job. Got married. Have a business. So this is home now. But initially, it's just luck. I knew I didn't want to go to Florida. My sister went that way, and Florida is a different country. So it's like Latin America with less laws. So I didn't.
Hey, I'm glad you picked Ohio, though. I'm glad you did pick Ohio. That's very good. All right, George Sataria is with us here tonight. George, you're out there, right?
I sure am sorry for checking in late, but it's that time of the year.
Oh, yeah. You do a lot of taxes. That's right. Yeah.
CPA
Hey, one quick question, George.
Yes, sir.
In Venezuela, they had an over 1 million% inflation rate. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean that happened in Zimbabwe when they took over. That happens. Hopefully, it's not going to happen in the United States because just to share an anecdote, I had a client. They wanted to get junk silver, which is silver that has no numismatic value, just silver, dimes, quarters, $half, where one can use it if there's an economic breakdown, like buy a loaf of bread for 10 cents. So this client bought $2,000 worth of junk silver. You know how much silver they got for that? Quarters, dimes, and $half.
No, how much?
They got $32 worth of silver. Pre-1964.
Yeah, all of a sudden now your audio is coming much clearer.
Yeah, I had my hand over.
Choppy there for a minute.
I had my hand over the microphone like a dummy.
Oh, so. That's not a good thing to do. Okay, so why don't you just repeat that a little bit, because it was really hard to understand. What did you say?
Yeah, I had a client of mine. They wanted to get $2,000 worth of junk silver, which is silver that has no numismatic value. It's more, if the economy collapses, you could use a silver dime pre-1964 to buy a loaf of bread or something. So quarters, dimes, and $half, they got $2,000 worth. So I was mentioning the coinage that equates to that in today's in silver prices, that the dollar has deteriorated so much. This person got $32 worth of coinage for $2,000. That's how bad the inflation has been since 1964. So we're on a bad trajectory, not as bad as Venezuela or Zimbabwe, but we got to be careful. I mean, Uncle Joe Biden was doing all kind of nefarious things with the money supply. As somebody mentioned, he was doing nefarious things with Maduro, and Obama was doing nefarious things with Chavez. So my question would be, this is the problem I had when at the time of the fall of the Berlin Wall, there was a group called Solidarity in Poland. They opposed communism and socialism with a Soviet imprint, but they still wanted socialism with a Polish face. So they were still socialists, and they just wanted socialism with non-Soviet tanks. So my question is, are the Venezuelan people up to the task of creating a constitutional republic more in the mold of the United States and staying away from socialism? Because let's face it, the oil revenues did pay for a lot until they let it get out of control, and then they stopped food production and everything else. How up to date are the Venezuelan people for a constitution that's more like ours as opposed to less like Germany or something?
Yeah, absolutely. I was telling these guys, we had a constitution before Chavez that was I read it from beginning to end, because there was when Chavez got into power, one of the things that he did was he did a referendum to update or do a new constitution, which he wrote in jail, by the way, because Chavez was in jail for many years because he attempted a coup d'etat against the country, which, by the way, that government that was ruling the country at that time was super corrupt. So we did need a change, because there was a two-party system for like 50 years that they were both equally robbing and stealing money from the people, and there was just so much money being made because of oil that it seemed irrelevant until it didn't, right? Until the money, there was more coming out than going in.
Right.
So the constitution we had was beautiful. It just wasn't being obeyed, right? So we didn't need to change it. That constitution was great. Even the one that Chavez made, obviously, is a bunch of terrible stuff on it. Like you can't really, I mean, the government has right to your property. There's really no way for people to have weapons. But even if people followed it, but the challenge is that not even the people who wrote that new constitution followed it. They're all just stealing money. So the Venezuelan populace does not want socialism. Is socialism. I don't care what, if you have a sandwich that's 98% ham and 2% crap, I'm not gonna call that a ham sandwich. I'm not eating it. That 2% crap's enough for me to call it not a ham sandwich. And so I don't care what you put in the other 98% of it. If it's a Polish type socialism or a Soviet socialism, socialism is socialism, and it all ends up in the same exact spot. A couple people at the top get hyper rich and they turn into dictators, and everybody else is poor and broke and having to eat their pets and zoo animals and picking food out of the trash as the documentary that we showed earlier is doing. So people in Venezuela want nothing to do with socialism. They have the internet, so they know. Even people who didn't live before Chavez, they know what the world is like. The American culture has a lot of influence in Venezuela and all over the world. So they know that there is another path. And with a third of the population having left in the last 20 years, so a third of the population has gone to other countries in South America, the United States, Europe, they know that there is another way. So they either know of it, they live through it. We don't want anything to do with that stuff. The only people who do are the 200 people that are on top, the cronies of Maduro, and now this Delcy lady. They're the only ones who are in charge, that are happy because they're in charge. So they don't really care what system of government gets implemented because they would stay rich unless they get taken out. But the people of Venezuela want nothing to do with that. Nothing. I don't know one human being that does.
It's great to hear.
Yeah.
And, people also have to watch, a lot of times it's called crony capitalism, but crony capitalism really isn't capitalism, it's socialism. It's just another name to try to besmirch, the free enterprise capitalist system. So good summary there. Thank you, Victor.
Thank you, sir.
Got a question.
So, real quick, though, I want to throw this in. I'll get to you. With the regime, what Trump did by kidnapping Maduro, and also there's something here. Let me just put this up on the screen here. It says that President Nicolas Maduro is set to testify against dozens of Democrat and Rhino governors and secretaries of state, as well as election officials that have taken millions of dollars in bribes from his regime in exchange for rigging elections. Now, as we had said, he was using those Dominion voting machines. But the question I have is
a coincidence, Joe.
What's
that? Coincidence. It's just a weird coincidence. You're making things up now.
Right. Coincidence.
But here's the question I have. Here's the question I really have is if we can bring some stability to Venezuela with new leadership, how long will that leadership last? Is it going to be another dictator with the cartels going to come in and just use might to take over and you're back to square one again, or what? Or do you think it maybe be a little bit different?
What the Venezuelan people are hoping that happens is what happened in Argentina with Milei and what happened in El Salvador with Bukele. That's what we're hoping, which that hope didn't exist for a long time. So we're hoping that from the top, there's leadership with morals, with ethics, with sense of economic prosperity, people who want to. Let's be honest. George just mentioned crony capitalism. Some of that happens here too, right? So the challenge is not capitalism, or the challenge is greed. So if we have good leadership with who want to be there, they'll benefit themselves. That's fine, but they want to be there to do what they're supposed to do, which is serve the people. The people don't serve them. I think we have the ability to achieve what Argentina and El Salvador have done, which is start at the top, get absolutely rid of everyone who had anything to do with the previous government and the regime that's been there for 28 years now. Get rid of them. I don't care what the means are, and I'm a Christian, and I know that sounds harsh. I don't care. I don't care what they do with them. I just don't. I pray for their souls, and that's about it. But they can figure that out.
They can figure that out, yeah.
Yeah, they can figure that out.
Yeah, but there would be a system where it could be a prosperous country again, as long as we get rid of them. So in 2024, there were elections where Edmundo Gonzalez won. He was the president, and the VP was Maria Corina Machado, which is a lady who won the Nobel Peace Prize. So that ticket won the election. They literally won the election, something like 80% of the vote. And Maduro said, cool story. I'm glad you won. I'm not giving up power, and so go figure it out yourself. So that's kind of what started. Well, Trump has been thinking about this for a long time, but that's kind of what started triggering this, 4D chess that we're playing now, getting Maduro out, et cetera. And so the challenge that we have right now is that it's going to take a long, long time, probably a generation, for things to get better. But we're starting. There is either yesterday or today, the American embassy in Venezuela reopened. That was, the pictures all over X, Marines raising the flag in that embassy where I went to get my student visa and my work visa a couple of times and get it renewed. That embassy had been closed for years. And so there is U.S. influence now, which to the people who are saying that the U.S. just wants to be there for the oil, well, sure, but so was the Iranians and the Russians and the Chinese. They've been in the country for 26 years, stealing our oil anyway, and the people, the cronies on top of the government, taking that money too. So the U.S., all they're doing is they're retaking the rights that were theirs. And even if Trump just wants to put, or whoever it is wants to put people in there to get the infrastructure back up, because infrastructure completely collapsed because of lack of care and maintenance, et cetera, get that going. The challenge is that the people who are left, so they took out Maduro, right? But the people who are left they're just as bad as Maduro.
Right. I got you. No, there's no way that everybody below Maduro is, all in the up and up.
Nix them all.
But they can take him out, though. This is the thing. What I think the long game is, and I don't have a crystal ball, but I think the long game is kind of what the U.S. unfortunately has been really good at, which is regime change and influencing other countries. And I say unfortunately. I'm very happy that this situation happened. I really am. And by the way, no Venezuelan I've ever talked to is unhappy about Maduro being out. None of them. Zero. His son, by the way, he's a congressman, he's now playing ball and smiling on TV, right? So, but that Delcy lady, all these people, I think eventually they're going to get either taken out, one of the two. And what the Venezuelan people wants revenge, I don't think we're going to get it, but I think we'll get some kind of deal that the U.S. government strikes with them and say, hey, here's some money, go live in Russia or Cuba or whatever you want to live. They can't stay in Venezuela, they're going to get killed because the people in the country are done. They're done. And so
that's good. You've had enough. You've had enough. And that's the key right there. People have had enough, just like us with property taxes. We've had enough.
Yep.
Had all they can stands and they can't stands no more. So my question actually relates to youth gangs. It's been my understanding from some news stories relating back over a decade that those sorts of environments, when you have a Maduro or Chavez, they thrive on chaos and disorder, lack of law and order, and violence on the streets. That's where they can thrive and survive. And so it's my understanding that in addition to not having a gun ownership and gun rights within the country, there have been reported mass incidents or mass reporting on some really violent youth gangs that have been armed. So then you end up, if this is true, and I've read from so many sources through the years, that you have average citizens who are terrorized by armed youth gang, where the adults, where the people with average citizens are generally not armed. What's your knowledge of that environment in Venezuela?
I've been a victim of them. So Yeah, absolutely. I can. And by the way, I don't play the victim card very often. It's not what I'm doing, but but objectively, I've been robbed at gunpoint, right, when I was 15 or 16, and so the challenge was, so it goes back a little bit, but when oil was discovered in the country, and there was a promise of prosperity for people who lived in the fields, people who kind of lived in the interior of the country, they all fled to the cities because there was now commerce and more opportunity. The challenge was the infrastructure wasn't there. And so what they did was they started building slums on the hillside of Caracas and other like main cities. And so when you see movies or documentaries about like the favelas in Brazil, we have the exact same thing. You can just look up slums in Caracas and it looks just like it. So those slums then started creating their own gangs, and the lack for those people, then they ended up with no jobs, with no, in the majority, right? Not everybody, but no jobs, no hope either. And so they turned to crime. And excuse me. And I think I was telling this story to Joe, but while my dad had to go through a 6-month or year process to get his first firearm when he was very young, over 18, I got offered firearms for $50 by a 15-year-old when I was like 17 or 18, and if I wanted the serial scratch, that would have been $70 instead of 50. And it was part of those youth gangs and gangs in general that form, and they kind of live in those slums. And it's crazy because they're not really organized. It's not like, the gangs here in the U.S. that you have the Bloods and Crips or whatever. These are just like their neighborhood and even their block within the neighborhood. This block represents this, that represent that. And these kids have no hope. So they're dying. They know, or they think they're going to die at, 17, 18 years old. So they don't care. So they're living pretty recklessly. At some point, before I left Venezuela, or I think right about the time I left, there were something like 100 murders a weekend in Caracas alone, in the capital city. 100 murders per weekend in one city.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was a normal. Yeah, but that was because of that, right? Because so regular citizens or law-abiding citizens don't have firearms, but the bad guys do, and it cost them $50. And so and when life is cheap, because these people have no hope, that's what it is.
That's amazing. Sure. That is amazing. Yeah. Bad guys always have the guns. I figured that out.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Victor. Been very, very, very interesting to me. When I see what is happening in the United States, though, I'm asking the question now: is our 250-year experiment over? Can we reverse this trend with a deep state at the federal level? It seems like we've got corruption throughout our system, be it the federal or the state level, and even at the state level. I'll just say that many of our state legislators are not even worried, or they're not even afraid of the citizens. So they think this whole property tax movement that we're embarking upon, they don't give it any credibility at all. And what we say to them, you're going to reap what you've sown, because the people are not going to give up their freedom and liberty in the state of Ohio.
Yeah, we certainly hope not, right?
I hope not, man. I'm currently studying for my citizenship test, which I'm just waiting for USIS to send me my letter so I can finally go take it. Because, by the way, it's taken me 26 years to become a citizen. That's a whole different conversation that we can have. But I'm on a resident green card for the third time now. And we can talk about this too anytime you want. The reason I didn't apply for my citizenship last time, when I could have a couple of years ago, was because I would have had to have 5 COVID shots in order to do that, and I wasn't going to do that. And so I renewed my green card instead. But I'm studying through my test right now, and all the material and all the stuff, and it's the Constitution of this country, the Declaration of Independence, all those things. Those founding documents are just unbelievable. I'm teaching all my kids. They're not helping me with the test, but I'm having them ask me the questions and stuff. So I want to ingrain in their heads how grateful they should be about the country that they live in and the opportunity that we have. And it doesn't work the way it's written. and it's deviating further. But at least having the next generation know, and then in our generation just know and get ticked off enough if things go far enough, that like, man, you gotta know what we have the ability to stand for. Because if not, it turns into a Venezuela, it turns into a Cuba, it turns into a Soviet Union. So I hope that 250-year experience isn't over, George. It's the best. It's the only country in the world that's done it. We have the best experience in self-government in history. So I hope it's not
unfortunately, we're not teaching that in our public schools, though.
You're right.
They are not teaching that.
Well, that's
so maybe
getting
Victor's message into schools, and Victor's message, and people who have fled other places like North Korea, Christians from China. You got a lot of people who have fled Soviet Russia. Those are the stories that are not making it into schools, and that's one of the reasons that I thought it was very important to host this conversation with Victor. By the way, I did look it up. Find Straight Shot Politics on YouTube. Lisa Chafee, that's spelled Chaffee. Lisa Chafee did a long-form interview, just one-on-one with Victor a couple of weeks ago. Again, that's what led to this conversation. It led to Victor being invited on this show. Listen to it, air it with kids, put it on a speaker, and let kids listen to this. The more of these kids that are coming home with their heads swirled up with crazy cockamamie notions that maybe socialism wasn't tried right and all the other times it was tried, and maybe we can get it right this time, or whatever, all the nonsense that's coming out of places like corrupted K-12 education, counter it with real life, actual stories from people like Victor. Victor can tell the story of what happened to Venezuela, and it doesn't take much for countries, as rich and beautiful and free and awesome as Venezuela. And you look back just, a generation and a half ago, listen to people tell stories about Venezuela. It was like big parts of Venezuela, of course, every country has problems, but they went from basically rich utopia to where they are now, with families roasting their pets to try and eat in one generation. It flipped. We can stop that by getting messages like this out. Again, that's Straight Shot Politics. It's episode 45. So you can look that up, or excuse me, 44. I'm looking at the next one in her text to me. Episode 44 is the long form conversation with Victor and Lisa Chafee. So wanted to interject that. Thanks.
Okay, here's a GDP per capita. I pulled this chart up, 1980 to 222, 2022. Now, that top line is Venezuela, and you could see that it did peak very, very high up there around 2012, it looks like. Very high standard of living. And then look what happened. Just a roller coaster down ride, and where it's at now versus all the other Latin America countries. So, yeah, at one time it was very prosperous. Hey, I'm going to give George the last call here tonight, as Victor, we'll have to have you on again and talk. It's been very, very good to have you on. I appreciate it. We weren't able to cover everything, but I knew we wouldn't be able to, but doing our best. George, you have a final wrap-up question here tonight?
Well, Ronald Reagan said that socialism, or rather our form of government, isn't inherent in our DNA. It has to be passed on and taught to the next generation. So that's so critical that we reach out to the youth. If they're caught in public schools, we got to take them out. Public schools, or at least teach them at the churches or wherever. But Victor, I just want to make one final point, and you could comment on it. When Reverend Richard Wurmbrand was let go from Romania, he was admonished many times. He could criticize communism as fallen and socialism as just not being properly implemented. But the thing he could never say about communism, or they would come after him after he came to the West, that it was an evil system, that it was satanic. So everybody likes to couch it in terms of, well, it's just a different kind of system. It's, the people that try to implement it aren't doing a good job. No, communism and its evil twin socialism is satanic and evil. This is what also has to be passed on to the next generation.
Well, what are the first things that they take away when a country goes socialist and communist? They change the books and they take away religion, right? The what's a religion in North Korea? The dear leader and the great leader and the other clown, that's, father, son, and grandpa, they are the gods. And so, it's the same in the Soviet Union. They took away religion. They take away freedom of expression. They take away all this stuff. So of course that stuff is satanic and demonic, and it's it doesn't come from a good place. And if it's not good, it's evil, right? And you, I keep waiting for one person to give me one example to prove me wrong. Just one, just objectively show me one time that this junk has worked. Just one, and we'll have a good conversation. Otherwise, they haven't tried it. Well, but you're going to, because you're that special, so you're the one who's going to get it right this time. It doesn't work that way. And so you're absolutely right. I personally agree with you. This is my personal opinion, but if you base it on facts, I think we're pretty on track.
Victor, thank you again for coming on tonight. We a little time constraints and stuff like that, but this opened my eyes to Venezuela, and I'm really glad. This is what I like most about doing these podcasts. It forces me to look into the topic. I had to research the topic a little bit, and it was like, wow. And yeah, thanks again. Really appreciate your time coming on here, and God bless
It's
you.
a pleasure.
Thanks,
if you guys do anything else I can do for you guys, let me know.
We certainly will. Thanks again. Take care.
Thanks
we'll
for
see you
having me
guys. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
The games are done.